In this video, I'm going to show you how to make one of my favorite video effects, this light trail effect. This video is made possible by today's sponsor, VideoProc. If you're a time-conscious video creator who cares about getting fast results, then check out VideoProc, a video processor, downloader, and recorder all in one. I've been using VideoProc myself for a little while to convert my exported 4K video files into various formats, and I've not only found it faster, but I really like how simple and intuitive the program is. It also contains some simple video editing features like cut, merge, rotate, and stabilize. You can use the special link below to get a free license now and give it a go for yourself. Now, just before we get started, you're going to need to download a free plugin called Saber from Video Copilot, and I've linked to that in the description below. Now, I'm also using my own clips here that are licensed, so I can't share them with you, but you can find your own clips online, or you could go and download some of these clips from any royalty-free site. I'm going to right-click and create a new composition from selection. Now the next step is we want to freeze frame this clip on the part we want to use. So I'm going to freeze frame it on this part of my video here. So now I have a freeze frame of that clip. The next part is I'm going to work on the background of the sky here, and I want to replace this with a time lapse. So I have this time lapse here of these lights in the sky. And what I'm going to do is just drag them onto my timeline underneath my road layer. Then I want to come up the back here and remove this section of the sky. Now this can be done in any number of ways, but I'm just going to do this using a simple mask. So it doesn't have to be perfect here. I'm just trying to follow the edge. You could also use the Luma extract tool if you've got a bright background like this. Would also work, but I just find it's a bit easier with the pen tool for me personally because I can control that a little bit better. So once I've created my mask here, I just want to come down to those mask settings and I just want to click invert. So that's just going to invert that mask. And then I just want to adjust a little bit here of a feather, and then maybe take that expansion mask slightly over the edge, maybe reduce that feather a little bit to something like this. Now the next part is I want to grab my sky background here and I'm going to scale it down so it fits nicely in that gap. Now for the section in the background, we want to create a reflection on the water, but we still want to be able to see that water shining through. So what I'm going to do is just draw another quick mask going around my waterline here, and then I can adjust that mask opacity to reveal the amount of that layer that we can see. Now with the main mask up here, I'm going to drop this down so that those trees are hidden below that layer. And I'm just going to create a position keyframe here, go across on my time lapse because it rises up here and just readjust that. And then I'm going to take my Aurora layer here, just duplicate it and flip it upside down. And for this one, I'm going to draw a mask that roughly follows that edge. And I'm just going to readjust this here and then adjust the mask to follow the edge of that waterline. And then you can just readjust those masks however you need. And I can also adjust the opacity of that water layer down here. So if I want less reflection or more reflection, I can adjust that. So that's the first part of adding a time lapse to the sky. Now the second part is we need to remove this road because we want the light trail to come through, and as it's shining through, we're going to reveal that road behind it. So we need essentially a clean plate that sits underneath. So what I'm going to do is duplicate this layer. I'm just going to delete those masks on that layer. I'm going to come up here and use the clone stamp tool to clone out this road. Now you could use Photoshop if you want to export this frame and put it into Photoshop if you find that easier. It doesn't matter how you do it as long as you end up with a clean plate. But just to make it nice and easy, I'm going to use After Effects here. And I'm going to come over to my brush settings here, scale this up, and I'm just going to start by simply removing this road. Now, some good tips here for when clone stamping things is to keep the part that you're clone stamping moving all the time. So don't just hold it in one place and drag around. Move the cursor around, and I'm using Alt on my keyboard here to select a new part, and also adjust the diameter. So try messing around with the diameter and also the hardness. I like to use quite a soft brush on this. Then I'm going to zoom all the way into the background here just to remove this last little bit. As I switch between, you can see we have a clean plate of our background. Now the next part is I'm going to draw out the mask for my light trail to follow, which is the road. So I'm going to duplicate my bottom layer here and bring that up. I'm just going to remove the masks on that layer so we end up with another clean plate here. And with my pen tool selected, I'm going to start drawing a mask which follows the road line as it comes up. Now I'm just doing my best here to follow the main middle part of the road, and you can always readjust this later if it's not perfect. Now once I come out here, a little trick here is to create a big mask around here where we can get rid of that light trail there at the end. So now we're ready to add the Saber plugin. So with that layer selected, I can come down to Video Copilot, add the Saber plugin, and we're not going to see the background when we first add the plugin. So we need to come over here and change a few settings. So under render settings, I want this to be transparent. And then under customize core, we need layer masks. And that's going to make Saber follow our mask path like this. Now, depending on the type of look you're going for, you could just come up here and select any number of one of these presets to get different effects. So if you wanted something like the flash, leaving a burning trail, you could use that effect. But I'm just going to use the default one here. And I want to come down here and change my Saber color. And then I want to adjust a few of the settings up here. So for my glow intensity, I'm going to use 16%. And I'm going to drop this down, the glow spread down to 0.04. The glow bias I'm going to set as 3, and the core size I'm going to set as 1. Now under the customize core is where we're going to change a lot of the settings and animate our Saber going around our path. Now I want to change the start size here to be 30% and my end size to be 50%. So we're starting to get something that more resembles the look. I can also adjust the core softness here. And at the moment, the Saber plugin follows our entire shape, and we don't want that. We want it to be in a small section and only grow in size as it's moving around. So I can set my start offset to around 20%, and then I can adjust my end offset here by dragging this down. Now, as I do that, you can see the Saber plugin starts to disappear here on the start. Now, if yours completely disappears, you need to use this little mask evolution here to move it around the screen. So what I want to do is adjust this to about there, and I'm just going to bring this one back up to about 22% here. And then I can adjust the start so that it starts roughly in that position here. I might even bring this offset down very slightly again, down to about 21%, and adjust the start. Now yours will be different depending on how long the mask is. So if you've got a really big mask following a really long road, then you'll need to adjust your settings accordingly to match this. It won't be exactly, but the only things that'll change will be the start offset and the end offset. So just adjust those if you can't see it, and then you can move around your mask evolution. Now the other thing I can do is with that layer selected, I'm going to hit T on the keyboard and drop my opacity down to 80%. So now we get something that looks more like the effect that I'm going for here. So with that in the start position, we're now ready to animate that going around the screen. So I can create a mask evolution keyframe here at the start. So I've created a mask evolution keyframe here at 0 seconds, or the start of my timeline. And I know from previous experience that if I bring it across to 2 seconds, I can drag this right up so it goes off the edge of my screen like this. Now we're going to readjust those, and again, yours will be different depending on how long your mask is, but we're just trying to get a rough idea of timing here at the moment. Now with those two keyframes selected, we're going to make them both easy ease, and I want to come over here and hit the graph editor. Now the graph editor will allow us to create a speed differential in the middle, so at the 1 second mark. So all this is saying is I want this to be really fast in the middle at this 1 second mark, but slower at the start and the end. So you can see as I play through that we get that speed differential happening like this. So that's looking pretty good. Now you can adjust that speed depending on how fast you want that to be in the middle or slow. That's up to you. At the moment it's looking okay, but I want it to be able to change size to make it look a little bit more realistic as it's moving through my scene. So I want it to basically grow in size. So if you imagine in the distance, it's going to be smaller, and as it comes closer to camera, it's getting bigger in size. So about here on my timeline, just as it's coming closer to the camera, I'm going to create a keyframe for the start size and end offset. Now if I hit U on the keyboard, I can bring up those keyframes. And if I come across to the 1 second mark, so here in the middle, I'm also going to create keyframes again for those 3 layers. Now the reason I'm doing this in the middle is because this is the part where we want it to really exaggerate that growth and then stay basically. So we want it starting small and then growing in size towards the end. So I really want that change to happen rapidly over the middle as it's moving closer towards the camera. So I want these to grow roughly at about 10% over that time. All the start size is doing is just saying, okay, what do you want the start position to be and what do you want the end position? In this case, I'm running it in reverse. So I'm using the end offset, which will be my start size. And I want the start of it to be slightly bigger than the back part. So that's all that's saying. Now the end offset is really the most important one because that's saying how big do we want it to be in the middle of our screen. Now I can adjust this up to make it bigger here. So I'm going to adjust this up in my case to around 28, but that'll depend again on your specific setup of what you're using. But that looks pretty good where it is at the moment. I'm also just going to make these easy ease just to help soften out that movement. And that looks pretty good. Now I'm just going to readjust this one to start more in this position. And there's pretty much a finished light effect. So this is really the point that you need to get your timing right and adjust the sizing and all of that, because what will happen is if you don't do that timing now and you start to reveal the road, you're going to end up with a difference in timing, because what we're going to do next is we're going to reveal our road layer using this as a guide. Now to do this, we're going to select that layer, our paint layer, and we're just going to turn off the paint so we can see what we're doing. And we want to create a new mask. Now this one needs to be a bit more exact along the edge of the road, because this is going to be the layer that reveals our road as our light trail is moving through. Now it's really important that you don't connect up that mask. We just leave it as it is right now. So once we've got that in the right position, we're going to turn on the paint layer again so it removes that road. And we're just going to come up to effect down to generate and add the stroke effect. Now with the stroke effect, what we're going to do is just make sure all masks. We're going to scale this right up here. And we're also going to change this to be reveal original image. Now as we do that, you can see it removes the road that we didn't want in the first place. So what we could do here is just scale this right up until we reveal the edge of that road. I could also add a bit more of a feather on the edge of that. And now it's just a matter of going through and making sure that it covers up all of our road section here. Now I'm just going to turn off that light layer there so we can just see what we're doing. Now I've just named these just to make it a bit easier, but I've just turned off that light layer there so we can see what we're working with. And on the road reveal, I'm going to drag my start up to 100% and my end right down to 0. Now I'm just going to create an end keyframe here and then an end keyframe up the end. So that's just going to create a simple reveal. And now it's just a matter of going through and making sure that we're not interfering with any of these sections. Now the way you do this is you just move them in and out to make sure that it's not interfering with the layers underneath. So we should have a clean reveal like this all the way through our shot. So to me, that looks pretty good like that. So the next part is we're going to turn on our light layer, and now we want to animate our reveal of the road to follow that layer. So I'm going to start here at 0, and I don't want it to start animating until that road has started here. So I might create another keyframe here and I can start to reveal that road as it's moving through. I could just turn off this mask just to make it a bit easier to see what we're doing. So you can see that road is getting ahead of my light layer here. So I can just adjust that to make sure that we're keeping in line with our light layer here. Now the most important thing is we just don't want the road to be revealing before the light trail has passed through. Now it doesn't have to be perfect because remember it's moving so fast that you're not really going to see that effect if it's not perfect. Now I can just right click on these, make them all easy ease, and there you go. You can see we have our finished effect. Now one last thing we can do here is add a color correction to make it look more like it's nighttime. So with my road and background layers selected, I'm just going to paste in my lumetric color that I've already created. Now all I did here was just drop the temperature down and the exposure here, and also the shadows as well as the saturation, and that was pretty much it, just to give it that blue sort of tone. Now the other thing I did was also gave it a little bit of a camera move. So I right clicked and created a new null object. I took all of my layers and parented it to that null. Then by hitting P on the keyboard, I can alt click on the stopwatch and create a wiggle expression. Now for this one, I just use 1,10 close brackets. And all that does is just give it a little bit of sort of handheld movement. I've got a tutorial that we're going to look at more of this in detail later of how to create more of these sort of camera movements, but that just gives it a little bit of movement. Now a couple of little things just to finish off this whole effect was I did a little transition here at the end in my original composition. Now just to show you how I did this, just breaking it down, I created another separate layer here with the Saber plugin applied on a straight line mask. So I just drew a straight line mask going across my image, and then I applied the Saber plugin. And what I did is I dropped the opacity down to give it more of that opaque look, and I scaled it right up. So I made it a lot larger to fill that screen. So it is the same as this light trail here, but all I've done is just scaled it right up and made it more opaque. So that's all I've pretty much done on that layer. As you can see here on the settings, I have adjusted the start size and the end size, but it's up to you depending on the exact look you're going for. But it makes it look like the trail has ended, and then as it comes around, it flies in front of the camera giving you just a really nice transition point. And then what I did is, because everything is parented to my null object here, I created a position and a scale keyframe right as this point is coming through here. And I simply just did a pan across. So I dragged all of these layers across, and I also zoomed in at the same time, and it gave it that really nice transition here across my screen. I also turned on motion blur for all of those layers and for the composition. And one last thing I did to finish off this entire effect was add a light leak over the top. Now the specific ones I used here were from my light leaks pack, which I've also linked to in the description below. And if you purchase that pack, that just helps support me in what I'm doing here. And I've got a few different packs that you can choose from, but the light leak that I used specifically was from this pack. And all you have to do with that is simply just drop it straight over your composition and change the blending mode to be screen. So it just helps give it a really nice transition point at the end as the light shoots past the camera. Now, if you liked this video and you found it useful, you can also check out similar videos via this playlist here on the side of the screen. If you also like this video, maybe consider giving it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.